Hey everyone, just doing a new video for today. I suppose I'm always busy doing PGM stuff. That's just, everybody knows that. I've been doing one order every week for the last month or two, so I don't have much of a backlog at the moment now. I've almost finished sending out everybody's carts, but one order a week, it doesn't, 4 orders in a month, and I mean that order can be 3 cave carts, which are all built by hand with Fluffy's PCBs, and a motherboard. Now if you're doing that week after week, it's a lot of work to do, and I've been trying to take my weekends off like normal people. Well, normal people I suppose is a bit sort of relative, but how most people work Monday to Friday and then they have Saturday and Sunday off. So I've been trying to do that, but it hasn't been working too well. I've been doing PGM stuff on the weekend as well. But anyway, that's what I'm trying to do. I've been trying to, balance the amount of work that I do and then the time I spend with family and stuff, doing stuff for father-in-law's card, stuff doing on my cars, yada yada. There's always something going on. There's always a project I'm working on, or if I haven't worked on one, I've got a list of projects that I want to do. So today we're going to talk about, I thought I'd do a little bit of behind the scenes video to show you a little bit about what I have been doing. I thought people might be interested in that. The first test cart BIOS video did really well. So I'm assuming people are interested in what I'm going to talk about today, because that's going to be the main topic for this video. But to go behind the scenes and actually show you what I do, how I test things, how I modify motherboards, all that sort of thing. So the idea was I came up with the idea quite a while ago to have a cartridge that would have some sort of diagnostic software on it. So you could grab the board, chuck the cart in any PGM, not have to modify the PGM at all, especially one you were having problems with. That was the main reason, is for doing repairs. Plug the cartridge in, and then it boots and tells you, if the memory's okay or if the memory's not okay, what address it is, so you can work out what chip is faulty, tests RGB, it does all these tests to help with boards that are not quite 100%, or boards that are showing errors that I haven't documented or I don't know about, that sort of stuff. So that was the concept, and I had wanted something like that for a very long time. Then fast forward a couple of years, IQ132, and I started doing some technical stuff, and as everybody knows, he's doing the aftermarket PGM BIOS, the one where you can change the region and language. So he started doing that a couple of years ago now. But anyway, we got to the point and I said, look, is it possible to put like the BIOS that you're making onto a cartridge, make it boot at address 0, so before anything else boots, it always boots at address 0, and have that run tests so that I can, diagnose PGM boards that are faulty, but without having to take them apart, and I can just chuck the card in and it'll tell me the majority of stuff that's wrong with it. Okay, now you're probably thinking, oh, you must have a lot of PGMs that go faulty. No, this video is definitely not to show that they go faulty a lot. They don't. The biggest thing that hurts them is the rechargeable NiCad or nickel metal hydride battery that leaks everywhere and eats all the tracks. That's mainly why they go faulty. The second bit is the cartridge slot is a little bit weaker on the older models. It's definitely, if your cart's a bit dirty, then you're going to get crap all over the screen and stuff. So the cart slot can be upgraded to what's called a dual wipe, which means it's got 2 little connectors that connect to each pin instead of having just one connector per pin. That's an upgrade I try to do. Every PGM motherboard that I pre-mod, that I sell, I always try to upgrade it to the dual wipe. Sometimes I forget, but it is an upgrade I can do. I generally charge maybe around $20 Australian. So if you've got a PGM motherboard without the dual wipe, it's about 20 Australian, 30 Australian I'll charge, and I'll send you an actual. Obviously, you got to pay for postage as well, but I can send you the dual wipe one if you're wanting that. The later revisions of the motherboards did have the dual wipe, so you might have it. If you have a look, I'm not sure how much I'm going to get a good picture of this, but you might be able to just see that. You can see that each pin has got a slot in the middle, and then there's a pin on each side. So this one here, this is a dual wipe. These are the ones that you want. They work a lot better, but you still need to keep your slots and carts clean. I always clean every cart before I put it in. Generally after, if it's a new cart that's come in for a customer or something, I'll clean it. Definitely, because if it's been sitting on a shelf, it's going to be covered in dust and dirt, and it'll be dirty, so you need to clean it. Okay. So yeah, so getting back to the topic, which is the test cart. Now, the software is very, very alpha. It's not really even beta yet. I wanted to show where we're up to and yeah, a little bit of behind the scenes. Now, as I said, the BIOS that IQ132 is doing has to boot at address 0. Now, most normal cartridges that you have for your PGM, they'll boot up, they'll show the PGM screen, play the sound, and then the game boots. So a normal cartridge boots at address 1000, not address 0. Address 0 is before anything gets done. That way you've got all the access to all the chip, well, most of the chips, and you can test everything, and it will boot before the BIOS that's on the motherboard. So even though you plug this in, this will run first instead of the onboard BIOS. So that's really key. Now, to convert, this is an IGS made PCB. You can use Fluffy's PCBs to run the test BIOS. That works too. This is one that I've modified. You can see the PAL there. I've lifted, if I can get a shot of it, I've lifted some of the pins, did some jumper wires, got a jumper wire on the back. So that makes this card, this board, from a PGM game made by PGM, made by IGS, obviously, into a boot 0. So then we load the ROM on. This is the program ROM. You can see that the other ones are removed because they're not needed. All you need is the program board, which is this board. Later, we're going to do sprite testing, so then you will need the graphics board as well, because it'll have the sprite data on it, so that the program can test the graphics CPU on the board as well. But that's very much later. That's a lot harder to do, but it is in the pipeline. So these are the boards I use. Now, eventually, I will probably sell these boards pre-modded with the test BIOS. That way people, if they're having trouble with PGMs or whatnot, they can buy this board, plug it in, and it can help them with doing diagnostics. Obviously, eventually the BIOS will be released to the public, but it's up to IQ132 to do that, and he's not ready to do that just yet. I'm not sure when, hopefully soon, but it's progressing. There's lots of stuff being done behind the scenes. So that's this board, and it goes in the top of the board, so you just click it in like that. It's in, and that's it. That's why I've got the, I've got one of the little feet here. It just sits on the caps just to keep it nice. You don't actually have to have that there, but that's what I do, and that's how I test a board. So that's the actual game booting at address 0. Now, booting at address 0, there are 2 games that do it by default. The cave shooters, so Esbaluda and Ketsui, they both boot at address 0. That's why if you've got those cartridges that have been made, that either I've made or you've made them yourself from Fluffy's boards, you'll notice that Ketsui and Esbaluda don't boot with the PGM BIOS screen, but Dodonpachi does. So Dodonpachi does not boot at address 0. So they're the only 2 games that natively boot at address 0. So that's the booting. So now that we've got this, we've got the test code in here. I've modified this cart to make it trick it into doing booting at address 0. So we've got that. Now we need a motherboard to do testing with. Okay, we have to have that. If you're not going to have that, then you're not going to work. Now this one here is a little bit of a monstrosity. You're probably wondering, why do I have these pieces of plastics in this slot? It's just so I don't accidentally plug the board into the bottom row instead of the top row. So that's just a safety thing. It's very easy to do, especially when you're doing testing like this all the time. So yeah, so that's why I've got that in that. Just take off this just for clarity. So this motherboard here has been modified, as you can see, fairly extensively. If I can get a nice shot of it, most of these wires here control the VCC, so the power to the 4 main SRAM chips that are here, and I can just unplug these and plug them back in, and that's just 5 volts. That way, when we run the test code, I can see that, you know, because obviously if a chip doesn't have power, it's not going to do much, so I can simulate failures without actually having a motherboard that has actually failed. And these are just all VCC lines, so that's just where I've tapped them all. So yeah, so it does all 4. As you can see, I've got written on top, you can see the U25, 22, 30, and 28. Eventually, the BIOS, the test cart BIOS, will actually tell you which chip in which location is actually faulty, not just the address in memory of what is actually faulty. The only problem there is that all the boards up to revision 7, these chips have got different designators, and then after that to Rev 14 are different again. So I'm not sure what we're going to do about that. May have to put in both numbers, because there's no real way of detecting which Rev board you have from a software point of view. So yeah, so we might have to do that. So that's my little testing bit there. If you come across to here, you can see here, this is the RTC chip, and that jumper there, that controls the power on off to the RTC chip. You can see that the crystal's been removed as well. So that's the 32.768 kilohertz crystal that the RTC needs as a reference. So I can use this board for testing the RTC, which I'm actually going to do in the next few days. I've got to do some more tests. Then we come over to here, we've got the Z80 RAM here. As you can see, another lead going to VCC for power, and that means I can turn this chip U5 on and off as well. So this is just one of my test boards that I've got. So I've got this one. I'll just put it back together, grab its anti-static bag, chuck it back in. These are the best sort of bags to use. They're metallized plastic or metallized polyester. They've got a few different names, but the silvery ones are the best ones to use. They're a little bit more expensive than the others, but I always try to use them as best I can. So that's one motherboard that I've got. As you can tell, as you start testing stuff and wanting stuff to fail, etc, 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 you're going to have to go through more motherboards, modifying them, etc, etc, etc. So this is another one that I've modified. I'll just take the cart slot off just to make it a little bit easier to see. This board's not perfect. It's got graphics errors, which you can see down here, and it's had a few little modifications that I've done to the sound to repair it, because I know this had sound issues. So we've got over here a different setup. This looks a little bit dicky. These are the 2 jumpers that control these 4 chips in banks of 2. So these 2 are together, and then these 2 are together, and this is the write enable line, and that's the write enable line. So this is just another way of failing these chips, because if the write enable line is not there, it can't write any data to the SRAM, because these are all SRAM chips, and then the test cart BIOS will come up and say fail, what address, etc, etc. So this is another motherboard that I've modified to do that. So that's just got the write enables on there. I'm probably going to do the write enables for the Z80 RAM as well on this board. I haven't started doing that. It's on my list of to-do things, because obviously IQ132 does pretty much all the software work, but I do a lot of the testing work and a lot of the hardware type stuff as well, to help him out. Obviously, I obviously build motherboards for him as well, and send them to him at no cost. He is going to donate some money, so but I always try to give people who are doing development work for the PGM either free motherboards or free cards, just stuff to help them, to say thank you for doing the job. So that's this one here. You can see, yes, there is a fair bit of hot glue. Hot glue, a lot of people don't like it, but it's very useful, because each of these transformer wires here that I've got, which are quite thin, they go to a different pin that's been lifted up. So if I put hot glue on it, that wire's not going to break off, or the leg's not going to break off. So that's really, really important. So that's this guy. So here's the right enable board. Right, now let's put this guy away. Now the last thing I wanted to do was just give you a quick show of where the BIOS actually is. So what will I pick? I think I'll pick this one, the first one. And then we can actually boot it up. I'll plug it into my test loom. So the board goes in like that on the top. There we go. Grab my JAMA test loom that I have on my bench, because this is my test bench. Plug it in. Like so. Right, and then if everything is good, this will boot up, and I'll give you a quick look over here. You can see that the test BIOS is running. You can see all the things that it's checking. So you've got tells you what the dips are. I think the dips are reversed at the moment. It's got a quick red, green, blue, and then you can see the character RAM, power. You can see all the things it's actually testing. When they fail, they say bad, and then the address is in red. I know we're going to change that around so that the bad is red, and then the addresses are white, because it's a little bit easier to read. But yeah, so there's the board there running. That's obviously my test harness that I have for this bench. So that's the board running. So yeah, guys, so that's all I really wanted to go through today. Hopefully you found this interesting. Let me know, and I'll catch you all later.